From the moment we take our first breaths, an insidious seed is planted, a belief that whispers, "You are not enough." It's not a choice we make, but a relentless imposition, woven into the fabric of our lives through subtle glances, barbed words, and unspoken comparisons. We are raised in a world that teaches us to view ourselves as problems to be solved, flaws to be concealed, and burdens to be carried. Our schools, families, friends, and the media all contribute to this silent construction. And slowly, insidiously, we internalize the notion that there is something fundamentally wrong with our very being. Alfred Adler, a titan of psychology, recognized this brutal truth long before it became a mainstream concept. He understood that the feeling of inferiority isn't innate. It's a manufactured construct, a byproduct of comparisons, unrealistic expectations, and failures that, instead of being embraced as part of the human experience, are weaponized as evidence of our inadequacy. You weren't born with self-loathing, you were taught it. And as long as you cling to this belief as if it were your own, you remain shackled to a lie you didn't create, a lie that only you can now dismantle. Today we embark on a journey to expose this lie, to tear back the curtain of illusions that have convinced you that you are small, incapable, or unworthy. We will delve into the depths of Adler's mind, unravel his profound insights into the inferiority complex, and uncover the antidote he offered, a path not paved with fleeting self-help platitudes, but with a radical transformation of how you perceive yourself and your place in the world. This is a clarion call, an invitation to cease the internal war and begin fighting alongside yourself. For the truth is stark and simple. As long as you believe you are less than you are, the world will mirror that belief, treating you accordingly. If you are ready to confront the genesis of your pain and reclaim the power that has always resided within you, stay with me. Let us together shatter the lie. Let us consciously rebuild your self-image, brick by deliberate brick. In the nascent years of the 20th century, Alfred Adler, daring to diverge from the deterministic currents of psychoanalysis, unveiled one of psychology's most potent and, in a sense, perilous concepts, the inferiority complex. For Adler, this feeling of inadequacy wasn't merely a personal failing or an isolated consequence of individual lives. It was an inescapable facet of the human condition. Every human being, from the tenderest age, confronts their smallness in the vastness of the world. We are born fragile, powerless, utterly dependent. And it is this initial awareness of our limitations that becomes the fertile ground where the inferiority complex can take root. The child, upon recognizing their inherent limitations, naturally perceives a sense of something missing. This feeling, in its purest form, isn't inherently destructive. On the contrary, Adler posited that this very perception of inferiority could be the crucible from which overcoming, growth, and the pursuit of great achievements are forged. The impetus behind monumental accomplishments often springs from the acute awareness that we are not yet who we could be. It is the dynamic tension between our current state and our potential future that fuels our innate desire to evolve. The peril arises when this healthy impulse is corrupted. And this is where the true poison begins to seep in. When a child is relentlessly exposed to criticism, disdain, rejection, endless comparisons, and unattainable expectations, the feeling of inferiority ceases to be a catalyst for growth and metastasizes into an open wound, a searing conviction that, at their core, they are fundamentally inadequate. It's no longer a matter of needing to grow. It's a deeply ingrained belief that something within their very nature is irreparably flawed. Families, often unintentionally, sow these insidious seeds by placing disproportionate demands, by pitting siblings against each other in silent or overt competition, by projecting their unresolved frustrations onto their children. Phrases like, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" or "You never do anything right," or even the chilling silence in the face of a child's earnest but failed attempt, weave a toxic narrative within the young mind: "I am less. I am insufficient." Adler further observed how this feeling is relentlessly reinforced within the educational system, where standardization and comparison are foundational principles. The unique individuality of the person is often relegated to the background. What matters is how neatly they fit into the cold, impersonal metrics of academic performance. A person's inherent value begins to be measured not by their character, their empathy, their courage, or their creativity, but by numbers on a report card, by awards on a shelf, by fleeting external validations. Thus, what was intended to be a natural phase of human development, the recognition of limitations and the subsequent striving for mastery, degenerates into an identity branded by shame, crippling insecurity, and pervasive self-sabotage. The child doesn't just learn to perceive their flaws, they learn to identify with them. They no longer say, "I made a mistake." They internalize the devastating belief, "I am a mistake." Adler's insights went even deeper. He recognized that once established, the inferiority complex creates a self-perpetuating vicious cycle. The individual, dominated by the pervasive feeling of being lesser, begins to actively avoid challenges, subtly or overtly sabotages themselves when opportunities arise, and desperately attempts to conceal their vulnerabilities at all costs. And in doing so, they inadvertently reinforce their own deeply held belief in their incapacity. It's a brutal feedback loop. Inferiority fuels evasion, and evasion fuels inferiority. The human being is reduced to a fearful, diminished caricature of the magnificent potential they held within. But Adler did not view this as an inescapable destiny. For him, the very origin of the complex held the key to its dissolution. The profound awareness that the feeling of inferiority was learned, not an absolute truth, is the crucial first step in dismantling this inner prison. Therefore, before we venture further, pause and reflect. What were the early lessons you received about who you are? What ideas, implanted in your still-forming mind, continue to silently dictate your choices, your fears, your perceived limitations? For now that you begin to grasp the genesis of the inferiority complex within you, it is time to delve even deeper, to understand how the world you inhabit actively conspires, every single day, to keep that feeling alive, and how, shockingly, it even profits from your insecurity. If this resonates with you, consider offering your support. If the inferiority complex is born in the tender soil of childhood, as Adler so clearly demonstrated, then society acts as the relentless fuel that keeps that flame burning, sometimes so intensely that it becomes a consuming internal conflagration. You must understand this fundamental truth. The world we live in is not inherently interested in your liberation. In many ways, it depends on your insecurity to function, to thrive. From a very early age, you were thrust into systems that constantly reinforce the insidious idea that there is something fundamentally wrong with being authentically you. School was your initial, involuntary laboratory of systematic comparison. From the moment you entered its doors, you learned that an invisible ruler existed, and your inherent worth would be measured against its arbitrary marks. Report cards, standardized tests, competitive sports, academic rankings. It didn't matter your unique potential, your nascent talents, your distinctive way of seeing the world. Everything was reduced to numbers, positions on a list, fleeting trophies. Every minor setback, every small victory of another, served as a silent, stinging reminder, you are not enough. Something is still missing. And that was merely the prologue. The society you grew up in has been meticulously shaped to exploit your insecurities as a primary economic resource. The media, which theoretically should broaden your perspective and inspire critical thought, has been transformed into a relentless factory of unattainable standards. Advertisements, films, the pervasive landscape of social media, all daily feed the corrosive idea that there exists an ideal model of success, beauty, happiness, and that, self-evidently, you are still woefully distant from it. The true objective is not to inform or to genuinely inspire. The objective is to meticulously cultivate desire. And desire, in this context, springs directly from the feeling of lack, the gnawing sense of insufficiency. Every polished image, every slick advertisement, every carefully curated influencer profile exists to hammer home the idea that to be truly worthy, to be seen, to be loved, you must consume something, a product, a lifestyle, a carefully constructed new identity. And then the market, ever voracious, swoops in, offering seductive solutions to the very problems it helped to manufacture. Do you feel inadequate? Buy these new clothes that promise transformation. Do you feel insecure? Enroll in this expensive personal development course. Do you feel unhappy? Change your appearance with this procedure. Companies don't just sell tangible goods. They sell the shimmering, elusive hope of acceptance. They sell the intoxicating illusion that you can finally be enough if you simply consume what they offer. And when the promised relief inevitably fails to materialize, because it never truly can, the cycle tightens its grip. More dissatisfaction, leading to more consumption, leading to greater control exerted over you. The dynamic is as subtle as it is cruel. The culture of relentless comparison is normalized, even celebrated. You are actively encouraged, even implicitly required, to measure yourself against others constantly. Social media amplifies this dynamic to a brutal degree. You don't merely compare your physical appearance, your life circumstances, or your outward achievements. You even begin to compare the very way you experience pain, how you suffer, how you attempt to overcome challenges. Nothing feels truly yours. Everything becomes a stage, a performance for an unseen audience. Within this pervasive system, even human relationships are subtly corrupted. They often devolve into unspoken contracts of mutual validation. You are deemed important, valued, and worthy of attention only as long as you meet certain expectations. You are loved, or at least tolerated, as long as you diligently play the expected role. The authentic you, with your genuine flaws, your quiet doubts, your hidden struggles, is rarely truly accepted, and often not even by yourself. Adler understood that the human being, inherently social, is also profoundly vulnerable to social conditioning and manipulation. When society relentlessly elevates only superficial shine, external markers of success, and the carefully manufactured appearance of happiness, it subtly compels you to live a life of carefully constructed facades. You wear masks, not primarily to protect yourself from others, but to shield yourself from a society that stands ready to seize upon any perceived imperfection and use it as a reason for exclusion. And so, day after day, you are conditioned to believe you are inferior, not by chance but by deliberate design. Not because you are inherently less, but because an entire system requires you to continue feeling that way in order to function, to profit, to maintain control. Now that you begin to see this intricate mechanism at play, it is time to grasp the true revolutionary rupture that Adler proposed. Because unlike what the world has tirelessly taught you, overcoming inferiority is not about striving to become better in the eyes of others. It is about a radical transcendence, a complete refusal to participate in the soul-crushing game of comparison. And it is precisely this revolutionary vision that we will unveil in the next part. If what you are hearing resonates deep within you, consider sharing your thoughts in the comments. While many psychologists of his era were absorbed in intricate theories about childhood traumas, unconscious impulses, and psychic fatalism, Alfred Adler embarked on a truly extraordinary path. He flatly rejected the notion that human beings were merely helpless victims, irrevocably condemned by the circumstances of their upbringing or environment. Adler saw something that others, perhaps, were unwilling or unable to see: the profound, inherent human capacity to transcend their own wounds, to rise above their perceived limitations. For him, the feeling of inferiority wasn't solely an inevitable curse, a burden to be endured. It was simultaneously a hidden opportunity, a raw, untamed force that, if understood and consciously directed, could become the very lever for achieving genuine greatness. Adler introduced the powerful and often unsettling concept of compensation. According to his view, every perceived inferiority, every felt lack, generates within us a fundamental need, a driving impulse for overcoming. A child who feels physically weak can channel that feeling into a relentless pursuit of strength, potentially becoming a powerful adult. An insecure young person, painfully aware of their own social anxieties, can consciously cultivate charisma and leadership skills, blossoming into a figure of influence. A soul that has experienced the sting of rejection can forge deeper, more authentic bonds of solidarity and empathy than those who have never known such pain. And here lies the crucial point that is often overlooked or misunderstood. This transformative process, this genuine overcoming, only occurs when inferiority is faced head-on, when it is recognized without shame or denial, and when it is consciously utilized as fuel for growth, not as an oppressive chain that binds us. However, Adler also issued a stark warning. Most people, unable or unwilling to confront the raw pain of their own sense of inadequacy, choose a different path. the path of false superiority. They relentlessly